It's really important for us in our organisation and for all of the clients that we work with and for the public sector clients that we work with on a daily basis to understand what motivates the country. And we're very proud of this because I think you can get lost in the white noise, and one of the best ways is just to sit down and talk to everyday Australians. I did a research study about 3 years ago and we called it Secrets and Lies. And we called it Secrets and Lies because we've really come to the understanding that there is a big gap or a distance between the things we say out loud and the things we really think. And we do this all the time. There's things that you will say publicly and there are things that you will think privately, but it's when you understand the things that people are thinking privately that you find the best opportunity to connect with your citizens, with the populace, with the electorate, and with everyday people who are going about their daily business. Now, the methodology is thorough. We talked to 5,000 Australians, and let me tell you, we've heard some stories. Some of the secrets and some of the lies that I've heard in my time over the last 3 years would make your hair fall out. I do remember the one guy that I interviewed in New Zealand who told me that he'd robbed a bank and gotten away with it, at which point I pushed my handbag under the table to the furthest corner of the room, not knowing what was going to await me. So it is interesting what people will cop to privately.
This mapping exercise is one of my favourites. So very simple. I mean, the data allows us to dive in and look at local government areas and communities. So this is the New South Wales map. This is Sydney, and it highlights the dominant cultural group in each audience. And you can see there's a lot of red there. So very much Sydney is very much a Mandarin Chinese dominated city. However, there are the pockets, for example, the northwest corner, which is the Indian South Asian community, the blue on the side, which is in Western Sydney, which is the Italian audience. One true genius, I think, decided then to do a little exercise where they mapped all the Red Rooster restaurants and found that was actually a perfect guideline to signify the difference between Eastern Sydney and Western Sydney, and the haves and have-nots, the ones that have good food and the ones who don't have good food. And by simple data exercise, we're able to identify those really key segments within those audiences, and the families within those audiences all have really distinct behaviours, which was why we take the big data and look at the big data and say, okay, what does it tell us? But we really wanted to dive deeper in to get a true picture of what the stories behind that were.
Do we have a trust problem in Australia at the moment? Do we actually need to rebuild trust? I'm just going to ask you all very quickly.
I would say we definitely do have a trust issue, and that there's a massive difference in the life experience of people that have come through quite well, didn't lose their job, had savings, have support, versus the others. And I think there's a trust deficit gap, huge one, between the more well-off, I guess, and those that don't have a job.
From where you sit, as someone who has been looking at this for 30 years from a social perspective, do you feel the situation is urgent?
I mean, many of the people that I'm talking about didn't trust government before. I think, as you were saying, back in 2018 and 2019, they had their reasons not to trust, but I'm concerned that gap is growing. The divide between, I guess, the haves and the have-nots, and I think I wouldn't want it to continue.
I mean, a lot of governments are talking about, let's build back better, and that's both an overt political slogan in some countries and just kind of policy-related shorthand in others. The two challenges are, one is that when we talk to citizens, they don't talk about building back. They don't talk about snapping back. What they talk about is I just want to get going again. I just want to get going again. And so that movement forward, I think, is really important. And that's I think, a little bit terrifying for governments, because what are we moving into? So the language that we're seeing or the desire we're seeing from citizens is just to get going again, with that recognition that some things need to change. I think the difficulty, as I mentioned earlier, is that, while there have clearly been winners and losers in all of this, there isn't a kind of armistice. We're not saying the war is over. We're not saying on the 1st of July, everybody can burn their masks and we've got liberation. Things are going to change bit by bit by bit and drip by drip by drip. I think it's really difficult for governments to kind of just decide what the kind of inflection point is moving forward, because some things will need to go back. and some things will need to change. It's just, I think it's a bit too early to kind of decide what that is.